Okay, we're going to be looking at a snippet from the Joint House inquiry into September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, where Carl Levin, a panelist, interviews Cofer Black of the Counter-terrorism Center, chief of the Counter-terrorism Center, and Dale Watson, who's the assistant director of FBI's Counter-terrorism Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me welcome our two witnesses. I want to go back to some of the testimony here of Mr. Black, where you acknowledged, as has Mr. Tennant, that the CIA fell short, using your words, in not informing the Department of State that you had identified two al-Qaeda men. These were the two, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi, who were hijackers on Flight 77. These were two people you had identified back in January of 2000 and in March of 2000. There's another problem here beside failing to notify the State Department, and that was failure to notify the FBI. The FBI says that it did not know of key bits of information, that a visa had been issued to one of them and that the other one had actually entered the United States until August of 2001. So there was not just a failure to notify the State Department to get these folks on the watch list, but the CIA was aware of the fact that one of them had a multiple entry visa and the other one had actually entered the country in March. Why was, and by the way, this is nothing to do with intelligence information and nothing to do with not crossing a line between criminal investigation and intelligence investigation. This was public information. This was a visa had been issued and somebody had traveled actually to the United States. My question is this: why was the FBI not notified by the CIA of those two critical facts about two people that the CIA had identified as terrorists until August of 2001?
Because of the nature of our work being very fast-paced, there was communication. There was communication between the CIA.
Pretty vague answer, if you ask me. There was communication. And Carl Levin's going to quickly relate to him specific incident. There was no communication between the CIA and the FBI in regards to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi and data. In fact, it was intentionally withheld from them. And this is coming from the FBI who worked there, like Mark Rossini, who I interviewed, Doug Miller, Margaret Gillespie, and Ed Getz. So there was an intentional withholding of information regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi even entering the United States, let alone them possessing U.S. visas. Now, this was withheld from them for 16 months. They were finally told in a national security briefing in August of 2001, weeks prior to the 9/11 attacks. Let's hear what Black has to say, because he's lying right now.
Officers in the Counter-terrorism Center and individuals in the FBI, particularly a CIA officer assigned to the FBI. There were phone conversations, emails, things like that.
Yeah, okay, let me bring that up. The CIA assigned to the FBI, that would be Tom Wilshire, who was the former deputy director of Alec Station, or Bin Laden Issue Station, who was, he relocated to the FBI's counterterrorism unit. Now, he was the exact reason why the information regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi was not shared. Now, I sound like old hat here, but I'll say it again here. When the cable came in that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi had U.S. visas and were coming into the United States, when they were stopping at a hotel at the United Arab Emirates, in which the CIA broke into their room and took pictures of their passports and sent it to Alec Station. One of the first people to read the cable was Tom Wilshire. The second one was Doug Miller. Doug Miller was immediately drafting up a cable to warn FBI headquarters about two known al-Qaeda operatives who had a nefarious past they were allegedly involved with the USS Cole bombing, as well as the 1998 East African bombings to an extent. I don't know how, but nevertheless, they were known to the Counter-terrorism Center as being al-Qaeda operatives. And that information had to be authorized by Tom Wilshire, the deputy director. And he put on the cable, please hold, per Wilshire. And then when Mark Rossini actually went to complain about why the cable wasn't sent, Michelle Ann Casey, who was tasked to the counterterrorism unit and who was head of the Yemen ticket, or the Yemen al-Qaeda hub in Yemen, she was in charge of that operation. She said it's not an FBI matter, and that when they want to let the FBI know, we'll let them know. But this is not a domestic issue. Even though these guys were coming inside the United States, that makes it a domestic issue.
In particular, the lapse that we're referring to is to do the extra work of submitting a formal report to the State Department into their lookout system, tip-off, so that action can be taken. There was communication. I think you have a very good point. We have admitted to the lapses of not submitting a report in a form that would be actionable, but there was communication, but there's also an incredible amount of work.
Yeah. Let me just go to that point, though, about the lack of communication. You see, there was communication. I want to focus on those two specific critical facts.
Yes.
Are you saying that the CIA did communicate to the FBI that those two people that you suspected as being terrorists had a multiple entry visa into the United States and had entered the United States? Are you saying that in that communication, that general word you're using, that those two facts were communicated orally to the FBI? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is the identities, the names of the individuals.
No.
But the issue of the visa is problematic.
No, it's not. Since they are considered terrorist operators and that they're coming inside the United States, it's no longer a CIA issue. Even though the information is coming from the CIA, it is now up to the CIA to share that information with the FBI, who's the domestic agency, and the State Department in their national security briefs. Guess what? They never told them until August of 2001. And when they told them about the information that they had, they only told them their first names. And then there was another meeting even after that, including a CIA case officer by the name of Clark Shannon, who met with Steve Bongard of the New York, Washington, D.C. Task Force, Counter-terrorism Task Force, and Dina Corsi was there from the FBI. And he basically, there were two meetings, but I'll tell you this one, where Clark Shannon actually tells Steve Bongard and Dina Corsi, this was the second meeting, in which he told them their names, that it was Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and that they had Saudi visas or passports, but he never said that they had used US visas. Now, why? Why didn't he say that? In the first meeting, the FBI's own Margaret Gillespie was sent by Alfreda Ann Bukowski, who was at the CIA's Alec Station, and she gave him the photographs of the people that were at the al-Qaeda Kuala Lumpur meeting, Khalid, which is Walid bin Attash, Khalid al-Mihdhar, and Nawaf al-Hazmi. But she doesn't tell Margaret Gillespie who these people in the pictures are, and she went to the FBI. She says, go to the FBI and see if they know who who's people in these photographs. And they had a meeting, and it was Margaret Gillespie, Steve Bongard, I want to say Dina Corsi was there, maybe. Well, anyway, she showed them the pictures, and they said, "Who is this? Why is the CIA following these people?" She goes, "I don't know who they are." She goes, "You came all the way over here to ask us who these people are, and you don't know who they are?" And now, so they're distrustful of her, and that's exactly the point. What the CIA was doing was fishing for information, the classic fishing expedition, if you will. They wanted to see if the FBI knew at that point, that was in the summer of 2001, they wanted to see whether they knew the people in the pictures. They had no clue. The FBI had no clue who they were. So Cofer Black is a liar.
All right.
We have no evidence that that piece of information was communicated.
And that's critical information. Now to the FBI.
Sure
The
is.
FBI is at the Counterterrorism Center.
Yes.
And so when the Counterterrorism Center is informed of this information, why is that not automatically then known to the FBI? We're trying to connect dots here, folks. The Counterterrorism Center is one place where the dots are supposed to be connected. And now I want to press the FBI. Since you're at the Counterterrorism Center, and since that information, I believe, went to the Counterterrorism Center, why then wasn't the FBI put on notice that two terrorists identified as in early 2000 as terrorists, because they had been at those critical meetings in Kuala Lumpur, why then was that not enough notice, just being at the CTC, for the FBI to then say, whoops, wait a minute. These guys have visas to the United States. This guy entered the United States. Why weren't you put on notice? How can you say you didn't know about this until August of 2001?
I don't know the answer to that, Senator. And there's a volume of information that flows through every day. And I'm not sure where the FBI agents were at the time that might have had access to that cable or not. It might have.
They weren't. They didn't have access to the cable. Yeah, they read the cable, but they weren't allowed to share it. Why? Because the CIA wouldn't let them. Who do you blame? Well, you blame George Tenet, Cofer Black, Tom Wilshire, Alfred Ann Bukowski, Michelle Ann Casey, Richard Blee, who was the head chief of Alec Station. That's who you blame.
Come in from the other division of the CIA. So I can't defend or say that they saw it and didn't report it. I will say, though, without a doubt, I know that if the agency had it, there was no plot, no thought by anybody at the CIA not to tell us.
Well,
Now, Claude Levin even know, he says, well, there was, yeah, Dale, they withheld it from you deliberately. And the question is why?
nobody, well, wait a minute, there was a decision by the CIA not to tell you back in June of 2001. We're sitting there at a meeting and the decision was made at that meeting in New York not to tell the FBI about it. That was a CIA decision for reasons.
Yeah, he's talking about the meeting I spoke to you about, Clark Shannon. Clark Shannon actually testified at the Joint House Inquiry and says that he gave, I think he gave written testimony, he couldn't come. Well, he basically said that he was ordered not to share that information with the FBI. Even though George Tenet, and I had that breakdown in my earlier videos. I think I did that last year. The infamous video where Carl Levin's interviewing George Tenet, Robert Mueller. And George Tenet says, he never said, I never said that. And Clark Shannon basically testified, said, yeah, George Tenet did say that. And which Carl Levin basically told George Tenet, he goes, well, it seems that he told you something different. And George Tenet was like, oh, well.
That totally mystify me, because this is not criminal investigation versus intelligence. This isn't blurring the line, violating rules and regulations.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with that. This is public visa information.
That's
this
right.
is public travel information, commercial travel information. I understand the rules and regulations about not blurring the line between criminal investigation and intelligence, because you don't want to mess up your criminal investigation. But that is not the type of information that the CIA that we're talking about here, and that the CIA did not share at that June meeting. But I want to press the FBI.
Sir, could I just say one
sure.
thing? As we understand it, sir, the CIA analyst was not permitted to provide all the information FBI criminal investigators wanted because of laws and rules against contaminating criminal investigators with intelligence information.
I understand that.
Okay,
But you're saying you could have put it and should have put it on the watch list of the State Department. This isn't.
But
Right, that's exactly right. That's a great point Levin brings up. At the if you're not going to share the information because of whatever legalities the CIA has about sharing intelligence on a criminal matter, you could have put them on a watch list at least, and they didn't even do that either. They didn't even The CIA didn't even share that information, even with the Immigration and Naturalization Services. So they didn't not only didn't share with the FBI, they didn't share with the State Department or the INS. I mean, this is remarkable. Like, this is unbelievable. And, here's the real cover up, part of it anyway, huge. Why isn't the Truth Movement talking about this?
Eluding criminal investigation. This is stuff that should have gone on the watch list
Right,
by your own acknowledgement. This is a visa. That's public information.
right.
That this is commercial travel. That is
Play
public
with that pencil.
information. There is no pollution of criminal investigation whatsoever under any regulation by simply the CIA telling the FBI, hey, watch these folks. We have identified these folks as terrorists. These folks have entered the United States. That's all you have to tell them. You don't have to go into sources, methods. You don't have to talk
Right.
about wiretaps. You don't have to talk about anything. Just that these folks identified by us have now entered the United States.
Funny, wiretaps, that's the NSA, in which they were barely ever interviewed. And they were already monitoring Nawaf al-Hazmi's cell phone. And that's why the CIA claims that they lost track of them after they left the Malaysia meeting. Richard Blee actually says that, and they closed the Malaysia summit case, right? But the NSA never did. And they found out how many times they called from the United States to Yemen. I think it was like 6 times. And Khalid al-Mihdhar actually left and went to Yemen and came back in 2001. He went to visit his pregnant wife. And amazing. And the CIA even knew that he left and came back and still didn't share the information with anybody.
That's all we're talking about. There's no violation of any rule, any regulation that I know of by simply telling the FBI that. And I think you acknowledge that when you say we should have notified the State Department to put them on a watch list. That makes it the kind of information which is and should have been available to the FBI. My time is up. If the chairman wants to give them time to comment, that would be up to the chairman. I would welcome it, but I can't press that any further with that red light on.
Certainly, if your answers are brief in its response, we
Just make it, in my view, I think we're talking about 2 separate things. On one hand, we're talking about the New York meeting between the CIA and the FBI, and on the other, we're talking about the watch listing issue. Yes, the whole purpose of the system is to provide this type of information to the Department of State.
And you didn't. See, that's the point. That's the whole point. Now, this is a bureaucratic problem, right? And this is, we can blame interagency infighting, right? One agency doesn't want to share with the other agency. But like I said yesterday in the live discussion regarding Able Danger, where Schaefer actually says that he was naive to think that all the agencies were being on the fight together against foreign threats to the country. And that wasn't the case, because when Schaefer actually was hosting the CIA liaison officers from Alec Station, the CIA basically told him, we're not even going to share anything with you because you'll steal our thunder. That's what they said. That was a direct quote. I couldn't believe it, right? He can't believe it. Well, now you can believe it here. I mean, I post these all the time where, I mean, the CIA basically, contradicts their previous statements that they make, because they write written statements. They do an oral statement before they're interviewed. And they want to all come out clean. They say, listen, we tried our best. Alfreda Ambikowski was interviewed behind a screen. I believe this is the 9/11 Commission, but that wasn't viewed. Or wasn't made public. And she said that, yes, I walked over to the FBI office in Washington, D.C. and gave them files regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. However, here's the problem Bukowski didn't anticipate, was that there was no key logging of Alfreda Ambikowski ever visiting the headquarters. And she basically told them, the commission staffer said, they keep logs of all the people. And she goes, I was in the building. So she basically lied, just like Cofer Black lies, and just like George Tenet lies. It's what the CIA does for a living. And that's all they'll ever do regarding the events of September 11th, 2001.